Talking today with Frederic Laloux, the author of Reinventing Organizations, a guide to creating organizations inspired by the next stage of human consciousness. Frederic, it's good to see you today. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Paul.
We've known each other for a while, Frederic, and you spent a little bit of time talking with us towards the tail end of you working on your book, and I got to sit through a talk of yours and was very, very intrigued by the model that you presented. And so I was really excited when the book came out and got it immediately and read it. And it's a fascinating book. And I don't want to give too much away. I want to let you talk a little bit about it. But tell us kind of what is the purpose behind the book and who should be reading it and why?
Yeah, so the book starts with the premise that, more and more people just sense that the way we think about management, the way we run organization, it's kind of, past its due date. I don't know anybody at the, being at the bottom of organization or the top of organization who's really satisfied with, how we run organizations today. I mean, everybody complains about politics and about, infighting and about silos and about, endless meetings and budgets and bureaucracy and approval mechanisms and, PowerPoints and, all of that. So I think pretty much everyone starts to sense that, that more must be possible. So the book really talks about the emergence of a whole new management paradigm. So what I've been researching are a number of really extraordinary pioneering organizations that have been founded by leaders, by people who, felt that the way we run organizations today isn't working anymore, who basically have thrown out the whole lot, pretty much everything we're being told in business school. And we're crazy enough and bold enough to just say, hey, let us just somehow reinvent something entirely new. And after much trial and error, they came up with something that is just radically more powerful, more effective, more soulful, more purposeful. And what got me really excited, and at some point, got me decided to write this book, was when I started to realize that these organizations that didn't know of each other, that work in radically different industries and geographies, and in there are some businesses, there are some nonprofits, there are some schools, there's some hospitals. I mean, it's a really, really diverse bunch of organizations. But what they ended up using as structures and practices to run the organizations is remarkably similar, almost identical. And so I think we're really witnessing right now the emergence of a whole new management paradigm. It just seems that when you take out one form of coherence, say the hierarchy and the pyramid and all of these management processes we take for granted, you have to come up with something else. And there is a coherent way, consistent way that where everything just clicks. That is radically different, but it works, just so much more powerfully. And so that's really what the book is about in a nutshell. And so the book is somehow intended for all of us that sense that there must be better ways, and that are looking for concrete examples, but are also looking for really practical advice of, okay, but then, how do you make that happen? How do these organizations operate? So
there's one thing that really strikes me about your book, and I've read lots and lots of business books, and certainly as many books about organizations as I've been able to get my hands on. And you can walk through any airport and find no shortage of great management books and leadership books, and everyone purports to tell you kind of the new way of doing things. Something unique about your book is you approach it from a little bit of an academic perspective. It's not to say that it reads like a dry academic tome. It doesn't. In fact, it's very digestible. But you approach it a little bit differently in that, as you described, you went and you've spent time with, founders and people in a variety of organizations. You've tried to distill their practices and ways of doing things down into a set of, I don't know if you would call them principles, but you've kind of packaged it all together in a way that a person can take, and it's distilled down, and then a person can kind of back into how to approach it within their organization. Do you feel like the book can be seen as a step one, not a how-to guide, but a step one in really the fundamental principles of organizing?
Yeah, I mean, I've written a book a little bit, with the thought in mind that it could serve as a sort of handbook. Not really prescriptive because every organization is unique and every
Right.
journey will be unique. But it is a very, very, I hope, very, very practical book that tells you really kind of practice per practice, structure per structure, how this new paradigm operates. So it isn't just aspirational, it isn't just big principles, even though it starts with the principles, but it talks about, okay, so if it's, we feel that hierarchy and principles, pyramids, somehow aren't working more. Okay, so if you don't structure your organization as a pyramid, then how do you structure it? And who can make what decisions? And how do you recruit? And how do you evaluate people? And how do you compensate people? And so all of these very practical questions are being addressed kind of one by one, using examples from some of these organizations I researched. So I sense that people who are open for this and who are leaders of organizations, can find a sort of handbook where they go like, okay, somehow the way we think about compensation isn't working. People are complaining. How could I think about it? Oh, well, let me just look at the section about compensation.
Sure. So I don't want to give away too much for those who haven't read it, but there are a couple of teal butterflies on the front, and you have the book starts with a very unique take on organizations that, you draw from some disciplines that are not management or not organizations, and then you apply some labels some color labels. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the first part of the book takes a historical and a developmental perspective on organizations, which I guess is what you're referring to, which is a bit new in this space. And for me, that part was important because when I talk about the fact that there's really a whole new management paradigm that is starting to emerge, it's easy to get a bit cynical, right? And to say, yeah, come on, great talk of a new age. And
right.
And what I wanted to show is that, this thought that there could be a whole new way to think about organizations that is emerging isn't so radical at all, because this has happened quite a few times in the past. So, the way we think about organizations today is quite recent. And when you look in history, we've actually gone through 4 or 5 major stages of how we think about organizations. And every stage, has offered really fantastic breakthroughs and have, given rise to much, much more powerful organizations than the previous stage. And so, this is actually only the 5th or 6th time kind of in human history that we'd undergo, such a leap. And I think, a lot of people resonate really well with that section because it helps them to say, hey, the sense that I have that, something more must be possible, isn't just, some idealistic, thinking, isn't just wishful thinking. It's actually grounded in human history. And so really what I've looked at is the fact that pretty much all historians, philosophers, psychologists, anthropologists that have looked at, human history, the human journey, agree with the fact that for some reason, human history doesn't go kind of linearly, but happens through these sudden transformations, these sudden changes, right? And, these things are, this is basically nothing new. At some point, we went from being really small bands of people to, we joined the tribal age. And then suddenly there was the agrarian revolution. And then we had the industrial revolution and then the post-industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And what happened at every of these stages is not only that, the means of production and the technology changed, but the way we think about government changed. And what philosophers and psychologists show is that our whole outlook on life changed. And what few people looked at is that at every of these stages, we fundamentally invented a new organizational model, a new way to think about management. And so basically the fact that, we might be just about to do a leap again, would just be one more of these leaps.
Right. Absolutely.
And you were referring to teal on the teal butterflies on the cover. One person named Ken Wilber, great philosopher, has given these stages colors. And the stage where just entering into it's called teal, and that's why I talk about teal organizations and why I use that color.
Excellent. So tell us about, give us a quick story or two about one or two of the organizations that you've interacted with. And you don't have to give the whole game away, but just tell us a little bit about some of the innovative organizations you've encountered.
Yeah, so one organization I like to talk about is a Dutch neighborhood nursing organization. It's a great story because it really shows how you can go from the current way to think about management to a whole new way, and how successful you can be with it, and how soulful the result is. So it's a neighborhood nursing organization. So basically nurses that don't work in hospitals, but that go to see old and sick people in their homes. And Holland used to have a neighborhood nurse in pretty much every neighborhood in the country for the last 200 years. And in the 1980s, the Dutch state, who paid most of the bills to the social security system, pushed these nurses to regroup into a large organization, with all of the current management thinking of saying, hey, there's economies of scale to be had there, let's have these nurses specialize. And so they, had these ideas of, let's have experienced nurses do the expensive nurses do the complicated stuff, and all the rest, farm that out to the cheap nurses. And then right. Let's take, the phones away and have a call center so we can just interchangeably send any nurse to any patient. And then let's, some nurses are much more productive than others. So let's time, the average time it takes, and then let's have, standard times. And so, giving a shot is 10 minutes and changing compression stocking is 2.5 minutes. So I'm not joking, right? 2.5 minutes, you come in and say hello to the old lady, change the stocking, and you're out again. And then now that we have these standard times, that we have Google Maps, well, we can plan. So we have a planning department. And so as a nurse, you receive a sheet of paper that tells you, hey, you start at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. At 8:10, you finished your shot, and you have 3 minutes to travel. At 8:13, you go to change your compression stocking. At 8:15, you're out. And then these organizations grew very big. And so you had then, district managers and regional managers who used to be young people who didn't know any of the work, but that basically just had to watch the productivity and, kind of tell nurses to speed up. And the result was fascinating, because at the same time, they really cut some costs. So, in some ways it was really successful, but clients hated it. These old people see a new person coming in every day that they don't know. And, they're all often old, confused people. And the nurses hated it because, they come in, the old person tells them, well, it says on the sheet of paper that you should give me a shot, but let me explain to you, it's a bit more complex than that. And the nurse basically just says, no, sorry, no time, and is out again. And so, just fundamentally killed all sense of vocation for the nurses. But it was in some ways, very productive. And then there was this guy called Jos de Blok, who was a neighborhood nurse for 10 years, and then went into management for one of these organizations, tried to change it from the inside and wasn't successful. And in late 2006, early 2007, so not so long ago, he created Buurtzorg. And it's just started with a very, very different idea of care. His idea of care is not to just give shots, but to help these patients lead rich and autonomous lives. And that's really what Buurtzorg is about. And so the nurses will come in and actually sit and, have a coffee with the old person and ask them, what can you still do, and where do you need help, and do you have children? Could your children maybe help you? Oh, you don't get along with your children. Maybe we make a family reunion. Maybe we can talk some things out. And, and I see you have a young family next door. Do you mind if I just ring at their door and introduce you to them? Maybe they can help you once in a while. And what he did is he just started with this small team of 10 nurses, and said, with 10 people, we have all the economies of scale that we need. We don't even need a boss. We're all highly professional nurses. We'll just distribute management tasks among ourselves, the planning and everything that used to be farmed out to specialist, staff roles. We'll just do that next to our day jobs, basically. And that's it. And so the clients loved it, and the nurses loved it. And now, 7 years later, they went from 10 people to 7,500.
Wow.
And they basically have now 75% of all neighborhood nurses in the Netherlands working for them. They have 75% market share.
Unbelievable.
Basically, because all of the nurses desert traditional employers, all want to work at Buurtzorg. And because clients love it so much, they all want to be, working with Buurtzorg. And And the way they operate internally is revolutionary because, for instance, they got rid of hierarchy entirely. So there is no more boss-subordinate relationship, which probably won't surprise people who are familiar with Morningstar. And so they just operate in these small teams of 10 to 12 nurses that are all operating in one neighborhood. And beyond that, they just have a very small headquarters of 25 people that take care of the 7,500. And
wow.
basically, they do a bit of administrative stuff, and but mostly what they do is that they teach these teams of 10 to 12 nurses how to operate without hierarchy. How do you run meetings in ways that are efficient? How do you make decisions that are not top down, but that are not consensus driven, that are not exhausting? And so they basically teach these teams new management methods. And so whenever new nurses want to join, what Biertzog says is, hey, here's other CVs of nurses that have contacted us from the same area. Get together when you feel that you have a team of 10 to 12 that get along well. Give us a call, and we'll just teach you, everything you need to know about how to run, in this new way. And what is fascinating about that example is that at some point, Ernst & Young made a study about the medical and the financial aspects of it, because if you look at it from the outside, it sounds like, hey, yeah, of course you can do great things if you sit down and have coffee and do family meetings instead of giving shots, right? I mean, that's easy enough, if you have that luxury. And what this Ernst & Young study found out is that Biertzog only uses 40% of the hours that the doctors prescribes.
Oh wow.
Because they make patients autonomous so much quicker. Basically, the whole philosophy of Biertzog is let's make ourselves redundant as quickly as we can. So basically, by actually not timing, shots, and they're actually dramatically more productive than traditional organizations, and they save the Dutch state hundreds of millions of dollars every year by actually taking the time to drink coffee, to have really deep, meaningful relationship with their patients, because they just help these people become autonomous so much quicker. So there's much more to be said about the revolutionary management systems that they've put in place. But just to give that example, 7,500 people, headquarters of just 25, and no management, no hierarchy. Even Jos de Blok, the founder, who's a bit like Chris Ruffert at Morningstar, has a very strong presence, very strong character, but he has no more power than anyone else to make decisions. There's a very clear mechanism for how do you make decisions in the absence of anybody being the boss of anyone else.
So that's I imagine I speak for everyone who's going to be watching this when I say that's a very inspirational story, and there are numerous other similar stories represented in the book. I think the good news for the prospective reader is that not only does the book give you the stories, but it gives you a bit of a framework to help you kind of figure out how do I map these practices and these principles and these unique circumstances to my organization. And I think that's kind of the gold that's hidden in the book. So if a person wants to buy the book, where do they go? Tell us how to find the book.
So obviously on Amazon, on all Amazon sites, the American, the European, and Japanese sites, etc. You can also download PDF or Kindle or iBook version directly from the website of the book, reinventingorganizations.com. And you can participate in a cool experiment on the same website, reinventingorganizations.com. You can also download these electronic versions in a pay what feels right mode. So you buy the book, and you basically just commit to marking your calendar, let's say a month down the road, and once you've read it, think about what you want to give back. And so far I've loved it. It's just such a wonderful surprise to see what people give back in terms of money, or sometimes even I've had other interesting gifts, and so it feels to me like a very meaningful way to engage with readers.
Well, and here's an author that obviously believes in his book. He's willing to send you the book, and you can read it, and then you can figure out how much it's worth. So that's that.
Which is dangerous. I mean, some people gave much more than and told me I wish I had paid, the fixed price.
Yeah, so beware if you plan on taking Frederic up on that. And then finally, if someone wants to connect with you via social network or some other mechanism, you've already mentioned the website reinventingorganizations.com, and we'll have that on the screen here in a moment. But can they find you on Twitter or?
Not on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, and in general, I apologize for not responding much. I'm this kind of strange animal. I live a simple life and spending lots of time with my children and with trees and nature, and not much time at all on social networks.
All right.
So
that's fine. Anything else that you want folks to know? Well,
if you share in the sense that the way we run organizations today is past its due date, and that there's got to be something more out there. Follow that hunch, follow that intuition, and just be bold and experiment and go with it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Frederic, for being with us today. For all of you out there, you got to get out and buy the book. It's an incredible read, one of the best I've read in a very long time. Reinventingorganizations.com. You can find it on Amazon. And thank you very much for being with us, Frederic.
Thank you. My pleasure.